they're not going to cast that aside because America asked them to do so. They clearly didn't do so when Biden literally went to OPEC Plus and demanded that they actually increase oil production. They said, fuck off. And some people's response to this on Twitter has been quite funny. I saw there was the one guy who's like an anti-imperialist Chinese national, I think, but I don't know if he actually lives in America or not. And he was like, you don't understand. China has to do trade. Like he tried to frame it from like a Radlib perspective, which I thought was very funny. Let me see if I can. I mean, I retweeted this as a joke because this was very funny. It was like, Not Potato Bolshevik says, if China doesn't trade with someone for 10 minutes, they will explode. They need to trade. You don't get it. And that was, fuck. Can someone find the original? Carl Zha, I think. Yeah, Carl Zha. Do you have that tweet? Can someone send me the original tweet that kickstarted this discourse? I thought it was really funny. It basically was doing like, he was trying to do like a standpoint theory, but for the fucking Chinese state, which is a hegemonic superpower at this point. Oh, here, this is it. Tiberius says, China will never be the world's dominant power if it thinks neutrality during a genocide and attacks on a sovereign nation it considers an ally is somehow leadership. Carl Zha responds, maybe people need to consider the possibility that China doesn't want to be the world's dominant power. China is not seeking to supplant the U.S. as the global cop. China's goal is always the development and the well-being of Chinese people. Unilateral sanctions on Israel won't work because the West will supply whatever Israel needs. So it will just be empty virtue signaling. Did Iran ask China for help in the current conflict? China's certainly not responsible for the impotence of those who live in the imperial core, yet can't affect meaningful changes in their own government's behavior. China is not going to destroy the U.S. empire for you. Chinese people don't owe you anything. Now, this is a hilarious fucking post, in my opinion, because as you know, China lovers in the Western world, people are not going, China, please save us. Okay, maybe some people are, but I think that there is a reasonable analysis here. There's a reasonable analysis beyond like, why won't China do anything that we can't do here in the Western world? The question is, why doesn't China do anything for its own interests in the fucking region? Iran provides between 1/3 or half of Chinese oil. This is an existential crisis for China. They don't want to outwardly declare support, fine, but they must provide covert support, at least to overwhelm Israeli missile defenses for the time being. Yeah, it's just like, if Iran falls, I mean, the reason for why Iran must fall from the Western perspective is literally so they can move on to China. Okay, either bringing Iran through diplomacy into the banner of Western interests, under the umbrella of Western interests, which is not super likely, but who knows, because the Ayatollah has been very, very restrained, or by directly destroying the Iranian state with the hopes that they can destabilize it so that they can't be a reliable energy provider to China in general. So this isn't like Chinese defense of Iran in this circumstance would be an act of self-defense. If America's unlimited support to Israel is a defense of American interests in the region, then Chinese defense of Iran would be an act of self-defense for China's interests in the region. Here is Arnaud Bertrand, who is another, G writer, whose analysis I think is interesting, and I, often read it, saying this. I keep seeing scores of people saying that unless China intervenes in the Middle East, it will somehow be their end. Meanwhile, fascinatingly, here's what Oriana Skylar Mastro, who used to be the Pentagon's top strategic planner on China and is now a professor at Stanford, has to say about it. In a nutshell, she says that the U.S. would love nothing more than to drag China into conflicts like that with Iran, and she herself has often tried to articulate recommendations to trap China in that way, but China never takes the bait, which in her view shows that they're very strategically disciplined. It also reflects that the fact that China, unlike the U.S., obviously do not believe in foreign military intervention as a tool of power. they believe in using political and economic tools. She asked rhetorically, the war in Afghanistan cost the equivalent of 10 Belt and Road initiatives. So which one is more impactful in the world? She is adamant that the U.S.'s renewed involvement in the Middle East is an unequivocal mistake. As she explains, not only will it prevent once more the mythical pivot to Asia, which is obviously in and of itself in China's interest, but it will only further deplete U.S. resources without much to show for it in the end. Effectively, according to her, China gets exactly what they want, the U.S. repeatedly getting baited and exhausting itself into costly military interventions with strategic rationale. As she puts it, that's how great powers decline. In fact, it's exactly the type of strategic overextension that led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. So who's right, the Twitter crowd or Pentagon Oriana? My answer to this very question in my new Substack article where I explain where I find myself surprisingly agreeing with a notorious Pentagon China hawk. This is incorrect only because if America is depleting its resources and then they actually strike a deal with Iran that decouples Iran from China or destabilizes Iran so thoroughly that Iran can no longer be an energy provider for China, then China's fucking cooked. There's a two-front battle here for America. One, to decouple China as a manufacturing hub from Western markets and whichever markets that America has command or control over. And that's part of the tariffs play that Donald Trump has been implementing, which has been somewhat of a failure, right? For obvious reasons, considering that no one wants to let go of the endless flow of treats that keep their populations servile, especially because it's been tremendously beneficial for Western nations to continue offering products and a sea of commodities that are dirt cheap. Okay. And the secondary part of this is energy going to China. If America basically dismantles the last remaining stronghold, with the exception of Russia, that is a major energy provider to China, all of a sudden they can shut off the energy faucet of China. Okay? China can't let Iran fall. It's that simple. I don't know how much of... I think that chatter was wrong when he said Iran supplies 1/3 of China's oil. I think China takes 1/3 of Iranian oil. Iran itself only takes up around 10% of Chinese energy. Like Iran delivers only 10% of Chinese oil. That in turn is 1/3 of the Iranian oil supply, I think, or even higher than that, almost half. But the difference, however, is that because Iran is not in the sphere of American influence in the way that like Saudi Arabia is, this allows there to be at least some diversity within OPEC Plus. The diversity within OPEC Plus comes from the obvious ultimate interest that every single OPEC Plus country has, which is to maintain their oil contracts to monopolize and set the price for oil around the globe. The more countries that are in the sphere of American influence, the more they can strategically make decisions to shut off the energy faucet into China. Yeah, also 10% is still not negligible. It's not like a tiny amount of oil. Do you understand what I mean, though? Because ultimately, it's not like Saudi Arabia and the rest of the fucking oil providers are going to turn around and be like, they're gonna turn around and be like, okay, we're not like, when there are alternatives out there, when there can be backdoor deals that are that have a higher priority for all of these countries to continue generating revenue. It's the most significant form of revenue generation for these countries. They're not going to cast that aside because America asked them to do so. They clearly didn't do so when Biden literally went to OPEC Plus and demanded that they actually increase oil production. They said, fuck off. So they clearly care a lot more about revenue generation than they do about anything else. But if they are all if they are either removing a market competitor that has a lot that has shown aggression in the past against some of the other oil providers in the Gulf states, or even bring that under the banner of American influence, all of a sudden, these guys all are now playing ball with one another. Therefore, they would probably be more willing to. Therefore, they'd probably be more willing to shut off any sort of energy going to China and redirect it back to other markets, potentially. That's the ultimate goal, I think. If there's a two-prong war of turning China into the USSR first and foremost, so they can engage in like a more serious, direct conflict with China, they have to decouple China from global trade and dismantle China's influence. And also, they have to be able to shut off China's energy. And they currently can't do that with Iran being right there as an ally to China, and Russia also. Iran is too economically dependent on China to decouple, in my opinion. The U.S. can't offer the same form of cheap manufacturing that China does. I don't really think. No, that's why I'm saying, like, it's not about like it's not about bringing China or Iran diplomatically into the sphere of American influence. That's very unlikely. And it's more so about a decapitation and destabilization of Iran, which would erode a market competitor for the Gulf states and also shut off forcibly at least 10% of Chinese energy. Anyway, Iran is also doing like Ansarallah style media hits now. Iran claims it dismantled Israel's air defenses, clearing the way for thunderous strikes. 12th wave of Operation True Promise 3 began with the launch of the super heavy, long-range, two-stage Sejil missiles. The residents of the occupied land of Quds, Jerusalem, should know that the armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran, backed by the heroic people of Iran, have dismantled the Zionist army's defense systems in several previous operations. The skies over the occupied territories have opened their arms to Iran's missiles and drones. The missile attacks will be impactful and continuous, as evidenced by yesterday's targeting of Mossad and Amman headquarters in the occupied territories. The commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps have warned that the gates of hell will be opened upon you. The thunderous missiles of the IRGC Aerospace Force will not allow you a moment outside your underground shelters. For days, you have not seen the light of the sun. Rest assured, the sound of red alert sirens will not cease for even a moment. You must either choose a slow death in the hellish life of the shelters or save yourselves from the 24-hour missile bombardment by fleeing as quickly as possible from the lands seized by your ancestors if you wish to survive. But if the plan is to choke out Chinese energy and Russia is a key supplier to China, then why is the administration bending over backwards to please Russia and abandon Ukraine? What do you mean? That's a part of it. They want to do another Sino-Soviet split. But this time in the they want to align with Russia against China. I don't know if it would actually work. I feel like there is like that was the meme Vivek Ramaswamy take during the debates, and I joked about it, and it was an L for me because it turns out that was the actual intention, it seems, of the Trump administration.